I know for a lot of people that have dealt with cancer, the uncertainty leading up to the diagnosis is far worse than when you actually have the diagnosis in hand. And the reason why I say that is for me, my brain was going haywire. I was like, do I have lung cancer? I've never smoked, but I'm just like, it's possible. You see things happening like this. Do I have a stage 4 lung cancer? Do I have some other sort of horrific illness that's going to kill me, within months?
What was your emotional state? I'm journeying through the story with you, and I'm thinking about being in the emergency room and going into the scan, and we're just going to get a scan, pneumonia. And are you glass half full or glass half empty as a person? And then with this, was it just like, did it crush you, or were you going, okay, when they gave you the diagnosis, like, I can do this. I can, like, what were some of your first thoughts? I know there's a lot of people listening that have been diagnosed with cancer, and many that are, haven't and are afraid of it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think it can be a little bit of both in terms of glass half full, glass half empty. I would say that for me, and I know for a lot of people that have dealt with cancer, the uncertainty leading up to the diagnosis is far worse than when you actually have the diagnosis in hand. And the reason why I say that is for me, my brain was going haywire. I was like, do I have lung cancer? I've never smoked, but I'm just like, it's possible. You see things happening like this. Do I have a stage 4 lung cancer? Do I have some other sort of horrific illness that's going to kill me, within months? I was diagnosing myself with everything. I would be up late on Google, and I know you're not supposed to do that, but it's very difficult not to, especially as a mother. And, without getting too far into my thought process, because I don't want to be emotional, I was just like, I want to be here for my children. And there was a period of time where I was fearful that that was not going to happen. I was fearful that my baby was not even going to remember who I was. For those months, I was unraveling, to be honest with you. Probably the worst mental state I've been in my life. And then once I got the diagnosis and had some information from various doctors and had some time to digest it and do some research, I started transferring my fear into a survivor mindset, which I think is crucial to come out of any difficult situation, especially illness. I think if you enter into a diagnosis feeling this is completely out of my control and there is nothing I can do, and I'm going to be a statistic and I only have a year or 3 years or whatever it is your prognosis is, people that think that way are making a bad situation worse for themselves. And, I empathize and sympathize with people who are given far more dire diagnoses than I was given. But all the same, whether you have great chances of survival or poor chances of survival, I think you have to cling on to that hope and do what you can to improve your odds. And that's what I did.
You chose not to do a conventional therapy after your thymus was removed and decided to go more holistic. Can you tell us about that, what choices you were offered and why you decided to do what you did?
Sure. So after I was given my diagnosis by my surgeon, I met with the initial doctor at my local hospital, and he went through treatment options with me, which were chemotherapy. He explained the type of chemo I'd be getting, and it was a very intense, seemed to me like a very intense regimen. I would be inpatient for a week and then just going back, every few weeks. And, that was very sobering and scary to hear. I still have the notes from that day, kind of just in disbelief that I was even having this conversation. It was over Zoom, of course, because it was during quarantine. And then he said, I have great confidence that your surgeon, did a fantastic job removing it. And he said, and because the cancer was so early stage, I feel that if you, depending on your risk tolerance, if you wanted to do a wait and watch approach, I would be willing to do that with you. And he said, and, as long as you submit to regular scans and coming in and, just being under my surveillance, we could work together, because I had already expressed concern over the chemo. And, chemo, while it can save and extend lives, it also comes with some very serious risks. Specifically, with me, I was worried about heart damage. I was worried about being put into early menopause. I was worrying about secondary cancers. I would also have had to have radiation, which comes with a lot of risks as well. So I really appreciated his advice, and it was a great relief. But I said, I'm going to get a second opinion. And I was totally expecting the doctors with the second opinion to tell me the same thing. I went to probably the number one, if not number one, then definitely a number two hospital in the country for cancer, specifically for blood cancer treatment. The doctor told me flat out, like, you can't do wait and watch. She said, this cancer is super aggressive. She said it can go from nothing to stage 4 within months. You're really young. You have great chances of tolerating the medicine well. And, we want to eliminate the possibility of you succumbing to anything. So no, we can't do wait and watch. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And so I didn't know what to do, because they were, leaders in the field. We're going to meet with a tumor board. We're going to present your case to like 12 or 13 oncologists, and we'll see what they say. I said, okay. So they come back and everyone said I needed treatment. So at that point, I felt like it was me against every expert, with this one doctor who had some faith in me. And I decided to go with him, and he's still my doctor, and he's incredible. And I feel like I owe my life to him, because I've gotten to live my life since then. And while it hasn't come with its challenges, I have a lot of anxiety around my checkups with him, which are getting better with time. I feel like he gave me a chance, and it gave me permission to do research on healing holistically and making sure that this didn't come back. And that's what I've been doing. So I don't know if it's just what I've implemented or luck, but in any case, I'm grateful to be here. So
what have you done that you believe has helped you remain cancer free? I think that's what people really want to hear, is those.
Yeah. So I've been plant-based for 11 years now. So I've been vegan for 11 years. So I was vegan before my diagnosis. Cancer obviously can be caused by many things. It's not just a dietary illness. It can be caused by environmental factors, lifestyle factors. So what I was forced to do is to look at my life from a 360-degree angle, see what was going on with me emotionally, intellectually, physically, environmentally, all of that stuff, and kind of picking apart my life and finding cracks. So that's what I did. The first thing that I looked at was my diet. And while my diet was very good, I felt that it could use improvement, and it could also use a heavier emphasis on disease-fighting foods. So it was easy at the time because I was home in quarantine. So there wasn't the temptation of socializing at restaurants or, going out. So I was cooking 100% of the time for myself. And I had lots of time because we were, trapped at home. So that was definitely to my benefit. I researched all the cancer fighting foods, a really heavy emphasis on dark leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, dark berries, turmeric, mushrooms, garlic. Those are my favorite anti-cancer foods. There's lots of science to support their cancer fighting and cancer inhibiting properties. Broccoli sprouts were something that just kept coming up time and time again as incredible, should be patented in the pharmaceutical industry, a cancer fighting food. And they're very easy to grow at home. So that's something I got really into, and I'm still sprouting to this day. I have a jar of them on my counter. And those are the things that I was just adding into my diet in abundance. So making these huge salads every day with all of these different components of lots of the things I just mentioned. And then removing a lot of foods that were potentially causing inflammation. So processed things. I was never really a huge processed food person, but, I have a weakness for tortilla chips, and some things with, more refined oils would sneak itself into my diet here and again, some fried foods here and again. And I made sure to nearly eliminate them. I had them occasionally, but they were no longer like a weekly part of my diet. Alcohol was something that I was having, I would say, a good handful of times a week, reduced that significantly to now, only having 1 or 2 glasses of red wine a week. And that's something that is a work in progress. I'm constantly trying to refine and reduce that. Alcohol is a carcinogen. So, definitely if you don't drink, don't start. And if you do, cut it back as much as you possibly can. So those are all things that, I've been working at with my diet. In terms of my lifestyle, My stress was pretty bad before my diagnosis. Dealing with, the addition of a new baby into my family was a huge adjustment, as it is for most families welcoming in their first or second or third child. I was having a lot of breastfeeding issues and putting just intense pressure on myself to, breastfeed for a certain length of time exclusively. The science backs all of that. So I was really white knuckling it, and it was having a big emotional toll on me, as well as other things going on in my life. Interpersonal relationships were causing a lot of stress, and a lot of this was all unchecked. I was not in therapy. I wasn't doing anything to really manage it. I was just kind of getting through. So I started to meditate. That's a practice that I've, been toying with for well over a decade, but it's never really clicked. And I just kind of took a beginner's mindset, like tried to do it without a perfectionistic mindset, just doing 5-10 minutes at a time, and eventually built up into a regular practice. And then the last piece for me, aside from diet and stress, was time in nature. I feel that nature for me has been incredibly healing. I'm really lucky to live across the street from a nature preserve in my town. Thankfully, there's science to back that too. But even if there wasn't science to back it, I would still tell you that it's healing because I can feel my nervous system just like relax when I get into the woods. So I would go on hikes nearly every day and, take out my headphones and just listen to the sounds of nature. And I feel like that's made a big difference for me.
I'm glad you brought up broccoli sprouts back in the diet section, because breast cancer surgeon Dr. Christy Funk, I think we talked about broccoli sprouts for like 20 minutes when she was on the podcast. It's like, it's crazy how they're just this little tiny foods, right? They're like little tiny sprouts, and just some of them are so incredible in fighting disease.